Welcome to today's webinar, One-Click Enterprise IoT Services. Our presenter today is Shyam Krishnamurthy. Shyam is a senior manager in the AWS IoT team with over 15 years of experience in the technology industry. Most recently, he built and led the engineering teams that launched the AWS IoT. He has prior experience in a variety of domains, including cloud services in AWS, OS, ML technologies for the Xbox and Kinect, and also the gaming and e-commerce services for Xbox Live. Shyam is passionate about using technology to help customers achieve success in new and innovative ways. Today we also have Rob Cochran, Hazim Sharaf, Nicole O'Malley will be our moderators today answering your questions from the Q&A panel. Shyam, welcome. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Jerry. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. As Jerry introduced me, I'm Shyam Krishnamurthy. I work in the AWS IoT team. It's a little odd hearing your own intro. My shorter version of that is I've done a lot of stuff. I'm not an expert at anything. And I'm happy to have Rob Cochran and Hazim Sharaf from our team who handle product management and program management who can help answer questions as we go through the presentation today. Before I get started, for people unfamiliar with AWS IoT itself, we are one of the AWS services, and we're focused on providing a development platform that enables customers to build and deploy IoT solutions easier. And part of that, we started with a cloud platform that helps IoT devices which speak different protocols like HTTP, MQTT, WebSocket, and so on, intercommunicate with other devices like phones, web applications, and so on, so that customers can build holistic IoT solutions. And since we launched, we've had a lot of customers use these and bring, both home scenarios, but also a lot of industrial scenarios, power management, agricultural scenarios to bear, and used our platform to build these end-to-end solutions. At the same time, we also saw that we've got customers who are on different ends of the spectrum in terms of the expertise they have in a particular domain. And so part of what we're trying to do is expand our platform so that we can address customers with varying degrees of expertise in each of the domains, because IoT sort of brings together hardware, software, services, and higher order solutions together to enable customer solutions. So in the spirit of that, I want to talk to you right now about how we're using the AWS IoT button and trying to provide one-click innovation for enterprises, where the model is essentially trying to say, how can we bring hardware and software for IoT as a service and allow customers to essentially just plug in their business logic to do innovation for their particular business. So that's sort of the quick intro about what we're trying to cover. I wanted to set the stage on what to expect from the session today. And so what we'll start with is, why does this matter to you, right? Why should you take, I was looking at the polls that were coming in. We've got, some customers who know how to build software, but, not necessarily hardware experts. Some customers who may bring in, either hardware or different levels of expertise. And so how can you actually use what we're doing and how do you apply it to your business? So I'll start that. Then we'll walk through the actual IoT button and how it technically works. With a sample use case that we built, we actually demoed this use case back at our reInvent conference in November. So we'll walk through some screenshots of that demo. And then we'll talk about some of our customers who've used it and how we're actually running our limited preview of an enterprise program that allows you to take advantage of the services that we'll talk about today. So let's get started, and we'll start with, a little story of me moving to my suburban home, not necessarily white picket fences as the picture shows, but suburban home, and I did what most of us here in Seattle do. After the rains, you realize, okay, the deck is all worn out. Why don't I paint it, right? Seemed like a fairly straightforward challenge when I thought about it first. I have an idea, let's paint the deck, go to the store, buy paint, and get painting, right? Seemed pretty simple until the software geek in me realized I didn't know anything about painting. So when I go to the store, even though this is what I imagined I will have, what I actually realized was I was staring at this wide array of choices in the store, right? You've got to figure out first how to clean your deck and different types of sanding it. You got to have 300 different paint options, toners, drying techniques, and so on. And at that point, I decided, okay, I should probably ask for professional help here, which is what I did. So I'm in the home store and looking at all these options, right? Deck cleaner, and so I just picked the phone up and say, hey, I need some help. And the home improvement store knows this, right? You've got a lot of people coming in and in similar situations where you've got a home project and you want to do some kind of improvement to your home, but the array of choices, the expertise you need in that particular domain is not something you have. So they've got agents, and especially during peak seasons, they sort of hire and train a lot of agents to help their customers out. Unfortunately, if you've done this before, you realize, especially in peak season, you're waiting. You've got 2 or 3 people milling around, the one person who knows about paint in the store. You're waiting for them, and the longer you wait, you get annoyed. You go, okay, maybe I'll go figure it out myself, and that usually ends up with me coming back again more annoyed 2 hours later, realizing I need to ask him more questions, right? So you do all that, and you might just leave, and that's not good for business for the home improvement store. So here's a hypothetical where one of the home improvement stores says, okay, let's go and automate this. Let's simplify expert agent assistance in our store, and we're going to remove that phone. We're going to put a simple button in there, and when you press a button on the paint aisle, it goes to the agent who has the expertise in paints. And so one, you skip the step of me walking around, looking for the agent. You skip the step of the agent knowing who's waiting on them, and you can streamline that process. Looks fairly simple, should be easy to do, but if you go back and look at what it takes, that simple button, if you want that to send a message to a phone, you need to manufacture hardware. You need to add electronics, and you got to figure out, where do I get my chips? What connectivity do I use? What radios do I use? What routers do I use? And so on. And then you're saying, okay, now I have to write firmware that runs on the button itself. I've got to keep it secure, so if not, I don't have, hackers sending all my store agents scurrying around. And you have to set up a cloud endpoint which you can use to intercommunicate between your web apps, your mobile apps, and the button itself. And so when we're going through this, we realized it's sort of similar to the company wanting to manufacture that button has the same experience that I had when I was facing the paints. I didn't have expertise in that particular domain, and they may not have expertise in all 6 domains. Everyone has a particular business that they're focusing on, and they have expertise in that. And so what we want to do is help you with this and say, look, of all the different things you got to do to bring a fairly simple IoT solution together to innovate for your business, we want to focus on the stuff that actually is relevant for your business. These are the web and mobile apps, and we want to take care of the rest of it and provide that as a service for our customers. And that's what we started with, and we realized that we had something we could use to help this scenario. And what we have here is AWS IoT Button, and I'll go through a little bit of history. Here, when we launched AWS IoT, we launched this cloud service. It had a message gateway that let IoT devices connect. It had a message broker that lets interoperability of messages between devices and applications. And we had a rules engine that opened up these embedded devices to the power of the rest of the AWS cloud. But we also said, okay, let's actually try and have a gadget that highlights the power of AWS IoT and also AWS Lambda. And I'll take a minute here to describe Lambda before we dive into AWS IoT. So Lambda provides the ability to write your own code in a variety of different languages and have that triggered by events. So that event could be a message from the button. It could be when you store a file in S3, and so on. And Lambda allows you to forget the fact that you're hosting servers, that you got to scale them, that you have to load balance them, and gives you this sort of containerized environment within which you can run your code. And it really lets you focus just on your business logic. So what we did when we launched the AWS IoT service is we found that the combination of IoT, where IoT devices send triggers, and Lambda, which lets you run custom logic, was a great combination. So we took our, the Amazon Dash button, repurposed it, and released this gadget that allowed developers to really learn about AWS IoT and AWS Lambda. So it's a simple button, has single click, double click, long press, communicates over Wi-Fi, and goes and connects to the AWS IoT platform, triggers rules in AWS IoT, as well as in Lambda function. And when we launched it, we didn't know how it would be received, and we found that a lot of developers really liked the simplicity of it from the hardware side, and the power that you could then use to do lots of different innovations on the Lambda side. So you could use that to, text somebody that you're coming home. You could send it, use it to order a cab, and a lot of different things. We recently had some news about, people using that to order their favorite coffee, use it to, donate to their favorite charity. Lots of different interesting use cases that are going on with this. And so we said, can we combine the power, the simplicity of this AWS IoT button with the services that we want to offer to companies? And we'll talk a little bit about, okay, how does this button actually work? When you click the button, we have a secure TLS connection to the AWS IoT Cloud Gateway, and a simple payload is sent through that to a Lambda function, and that can be used for whatever. So in the case where I talked about in the home store, you want to click that button and you want to send a message to a phone, you could trigger that to save it in a database. You could use that to send a text message to the agent if it's configured so. And you can really, all your business logic, however you want to do it, maybe you want to send it to page an operator, all of those are possible because all you have to focus on is that Lambda function in the middle. And the payload itself that the button provides is fairly simple. Here's my ID, here's my battery voltage, and the type of click, single click, double click, or long. And the Lambda function can then do a lot of different things. The IoT system also has a rules engine, so you can sort of, even without writing any code, you can save every one of those log lines to an S3 bucket or store it in a DynamoDB table. So lots of flexibility there on how you can use this simple device. So knowing this, let's go back to the use case that I talked about, right? We're back to painting my deck. This is what I want to achieve. So I'm in that store. That store can now build an experience where they say, look, I've got all these aisles, and these are the different capabilities that I want my agents to have. One person really knows about Paint, another person knows about Power Tools, and they can, you could build an application that, here's a demo that we did earlier, where you configure all these agents with different capabilities. So you can see, 3 agents here. They each have their different areas of expertise. And you have a number of buttons. You can place them in different aisles, and you associate it with the products in those aisles. And when you click it, what happens is a message goes in. And this is the administrator view, but you can also imagine a similar view going to a mobile device or a tablet that the agent has in their hands. And it says, hello, John Smith, you know about Power Tools, and somebody in aisle 10 just pressed the button because they need assistance with Power Tools. So you can take this fairly simple device and use that to achieve that innovation that you had with IoT in your workplace that are relevant for your business. Again, this is just an example, and you can then think about, okay, how do I apply this to my own business? Right? So that's sort of a long story to give you the motivation of how do we actually think about these, from simplifying all the 5 boxes that we talked about and focusing on here's the stuff that is really relevant for your business. We'll talk a little bit now about how we actually built this demo and how easy it was to put together all of these different pieces with the IoT button, with our serverless architecture in AWS Lambda. And I just want to also call out, we have, we'll talk about another webinar later this week on Thursday where you can actually learn about how to program against it. A more in-depth presentation we'll have on Thursday. But we'll talk about the high-level architecture here. We had, as we talked about, we showed you a website and a mobile app that tracks different agents, their expertise, and really takes the capabilities and allows people to click buttons that then associate send messages to these agents. That website and mobile app was actually done using a serverless architecture in less than 2 weeks by one of our solution architects. And he really was able to take advantage of Amazon API Gateway, AWS Lambda functions, and Amazon DynamoDB. The three of these services work together to give you, API functions, logic to run the code, and a database to store the state without having to really think about, my servers, my load balancing, my API front-end servers, and so on and so forth, and really, again, focus on the definition of your functionality that you want for your applications. We then tied the button to use the same backend store, so that when you click the button, we have a Lambda function that writes to the same DynamoDB table that these web pages are configured to use as well. So as soon as someone clicks the button, a Dynamo table is updated saying, request for assistance with this particular expertise. It matches up with the agents who have that expertise, and the mobile apps then get a notification. Separately, we also added, I didn't add screenshots here, but we also were able to do interesting things like send a log of every one of these to SNS and then use AWS Lambda and Elasticsearch to get detailed analytics. So again, going back to that home example, you could imagine, a supervisor thinking about, okay, how many requests for assistance did we receive today? Which aisles were most in request? Does that change the way I want the layout or the training that I want to provide to my agents, and so on and so forth? And it really lets you optimize your business without having to go through all of that work in building the actual hardware and software plumbing. Based on what we did, we actually started a pilot earlier, middle of last year, and we announced a limited preview at our reInvent conference in November 2016. And we have these 3 companies highlighted here and more companies as well who are working with us on this pilot. I'll talk to you a little bit about Home Advisor. Home Advisor is a great service that lets customers really figure out how do I get expert assistance for various home projects. We're staying in the theme of homes, as you can see here. And they're using our buttons in the pilot program to distribute to their customers. So anytime you have, you've got a leak, you need a plumber, you just click that button, they'll call you back, and they'll schedule an appointment for you. Very simple, very tangible, and the advantage of that button is also it's a very physical thing that people can remember and use. And Home Advisor was able to use our enterprise program to really get these customized buttons and write fairly simple Lambda functions and a web application that lets them connect these custom branded buttons to their specific business application. So what I will then transition to talk about is sort of what are we doing here with this enterprise program. With Home Advisor as one example, we have other companies as well who are interested. And we'd love for you guys to tell us, what are your use cases or the things where you can see innovating in your business with a simple device like this, and us taking care of, the hardware, the updates, the provisioning, the software, all of that, and the security, so you can focus on your business logic to unlock your enterprise. So in the program, what we are going to do is we're going to manufacture buttons with custom labels. We'll take care of the firmware and all the updates for the software for the button itself. The security for the devices are pre-provisioned, so you don't have to configure each device security in a manufacturing line yourself. And we'll support these pilots and deployments at scale, so you can both distribute these to your customers, have hundreds of buttons that each of your customers can use, as well as be able to understand usage and analytics of how these services are being used. And what are some use cases? So we talked about the click-to-call agent very commonly, but there's a lot of other use cases as well we're seeing our customers use these for. Replenishment of products is fairly common one, including B2B services. We have companies in the medical industry that provide supplies to other companies, and when the supplies are over, they just click a button and a new order arrives. We're working with some of the Amazon teams in the retail and fulfillment centers to improve some of the automation in the fulfillment centers. As some of the cartons and bins are over, we can sort of order new ones with just a click of a button. We have customers who are using these for simulations and trials where these devices can either be simulating counting, or I've just had a pill. One click says I had one pill. 2 clicks means I had 2 pills, and use that, for example, in a medical trial. So lots of different use cases. As you think about, okay, what are the things I want to automate in my business or at home every single day, you can see probably a number of different use cases coming in where you can just apply a simple device like this. And what sort of is on your side in order to use it is we take care of the button, the manufacturing, the software as we talked about. On your side, you focus on the business logic. So creating the Lambda functions where you write the code, whether that's something to send every click to a backend CRM system you have, send every click as a text message, send an email, or any set of such simple actions. You can customize the labels with your own logo. Configure Wi-Fi for your user locations, whether you're using it in a factory floor or an end home. And you can, the data is all yours, so you can send the usage data to your systems, and you can order and deploy it at scale from Amazon. So that's what we have in the enterprise program today. And you can apply. There's a link there, and I'll have the link on the last slide as well, so you can take a look at it. Some of our customers, they're really interested in this, but they want to sort of try it out first, do a demo. So we do have a developer experience. So we updated our button with twice the battery life since last month. It's been available on Amazon.com. So you can actually try it out as an individual developer. You just buy the button, and you can set it up with a easy-to-use Android and iOS app. And once you set it up, you can use a number of different Lambda blueprints, or you can write your own Lambda function and really play around with it before you commit to sort of, I want to do it, I want to go big into an enterprise mode. These mobile apps are available right now for usage, and so is the button is available right now for ordering on Amazon.com. So that's if you want to dip your toes in first before you go into the enterprise program. So there's a quick run through of what we're doing. I'm happy to answer additional questions as well. But the key takeaway is, we have the AWS IoT button, and it looks very simple. It is very simple, but manufacturing it and using it at scale requires bringing together lots of different disciplines that any of you in your individual domains might not have the breadth of expertise on, and we don't have the expertise in your business. So we'd like to provide sort of the basics on the hardware and the software and help you customize it with Lambda, with your labels, and with your Wi-Fi at your business location, so you can bring that expertise and use it to innovate at your enterprise. Applications are open for a limited preview. And if you're interested in how do I actually use this serverless architecture, how do I use AWS Lambda, API Gateway, Lambda Step Function, and other features that we've introduced, you can attend the webinar we have on Thursday. One of our solutions architects, Wale, is going to go into more depth about what we can do with the button, what we can do with each of these services to build end-to-end applications. The example I provided with the home store is one of the many things you can do with it. So you can also feel free to sign up for that. And that was it. I know we had an hour, but wanted to make sure I give you a good review of what we're doing at a high level. Give some time for you guys to think about how you can apply it to your business. And also, if you have questions, feel free to ask me or any of the moderators, and we'll be happy to answer these.
All right. Well, thank you, Shyam, for the great presentation and engaging with our audience today throughout the presentation. So on your screen, everybody, you will see that we have poll questions at the bottom of the screen, one at the top of the screen. So please take time to fill that out. Your feedback is very important to us today. You'll also see the slide is in the middle of the screen with our links on there. And the Q&A pod is still at the left of your screen, so feel free to keep entering those great questions we've been seeing come in, and we'll continue answering those. And we still have time left in our session, so we'll go into our Q&A session at this point.
Hi, I'm seeing some questions coming in. Thank you so much for your interest and your details. We have some of the moderators answering these questions. In addition, I'll take a few of these and address them myself. One of the questions is, what's the difference between the IoT button version 1 and 2? So the two key differences in the version 2 button are improved battery life. We heard feedback from our customers that in some use cases the number of clicks was not enough, so we've doubled the battery life. We will also improve the responsiveness so that the response to the click happens in just about half the time it used to take. So it's less than 5 seconds now for the full round trip and the action to take place. So those are the key. It's at the same price and available on Amazon.com. If you're looking at the enterprise program and looking at large volumes, do talk to us about that. And the previous V1 button is still available with a credit if you want to purchase it. So that's the difference. One more question I saw here was about availability of the button internationally. So providing international and global support is very important for us. We're working on it. Today it is only available in the US, but we're actually soliciting input as well as working on all the different hardware and software work that has to be required to support global customers. And so we're looking at it. Not at this moment, but stay tuned. There's a question I saw about how the Wi-Fi on the button is handled, especially as customers can move from, say, the home location to a work location and the Wi-Fi changes. So in the developer button case, you can actually use the companion apps to reconfigure Wi-Fi on the button. In the case of the enterprise program, because the situations where the Wi-Fi is being configured and the actual authentication for the customers is going to be dependent on your use case. For example, you may, let's say you're doing this in a factory floor, you might actually have the people configuring it or operators in the factory, and they're authenticating as the operators in the factory. So we expect that these experiences will be the application experience or a browser experience to configure the buttons will be specific to your business. What we're doing right now is we're looking at providing an SDK and sharing patterns so that you can build the button configuration experience with your own brand. And some of our pilot customers are also looking at taking the same experience we have on the developer button and adapting that to their particular enterprise, and we can actually exploring both an SDK as well as some higher level apps that can help in that. I have a question here about whether we have roadmap development being made for a cellular model to avoid challenges with connecting to end customer wireless networks. That's a great idea. It's definitely something on our radar that we're looking at. We're exploring a few different options here. One of the things we want to be looking at is making sure that this is also available to customers at a reasonable price point, and so we're looking at a few different hardware options here. I don't have anything committed on our roadmap that we can share at this point, but if you have specific use cases in addition to the the minimizing Wi-Fi configuration, but if you have, for example, specific roaming use cases or things where cellular would be a better fit, we'd love to hear your use cases. So reach out to us and or to your account manager, and we can definitely talk about what that means in terms of our detailed roadmap. Thank you. I'll take one more question from the Q&A session that a couple of you have asked us. How do you actually do this configuration of Wi-Fi, and how do you associate it with the customer? So we're seeing a few patterns show up, which is the IoT button itself. I mean, when you configure it, it actually goes into what's called AP mode, where it's an access point. So you hold the button down for more than 5 seconds, it'll actually become an access point, and it exposes facilities for customers to push Wi-Fi configuration onto the button. And so one of the things we're looking at as we transition out of our pilot phase is providing an SDK where you can actually program against these facilities, these APIs on the button to send that information. During the pilot, we're actually able to share some patterns that can help do the configuration yourself. On the web page, Secondly, with regard to, okay, how do you actually associate it with the particular customer? Now, that is unfortunately dependent completely on your customer authentication and so on. One of the patterns we're seeing here is because the button itself can be associated with any system in the back end with Lambda, we're seeing the pattern where our customers build a configuration application that right after it's set up and connected to Wi-Fi sends the credentials or sends a message to Lambda. If it's not configured, you have a few screens that ask your customer for the authentication scheme, whatever you're using, and then associates that in the back end with that customer. And that could be web-based, it could be a mobile app, and you can also use some of our AWS services like Cognito and Cognito Pools if you don't have an existing authentication scheme.
I'd like to say thank you to our presenter, Sham, for his great presentation and the time it took to get ready for our session today. Thank you for that presentation. I'd like to also thank our moderators, Rob and Hazim and Nicole, for answering the questions throughout our session. If you have any comments on previous or upcoming webinars or suggestions on topics that you wish AWS to cover in future webinars, please feel free to email us at aws-webcasts@amazon.com. Your feedback will help us improve our webinar programming. Thank you for the audience today for taking time with us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and now you can disconnect. Thanks, everyone.